Hello, everybody. Right, we're starting for real this time. Those in Space Coast Live watching this live about 2 minutes ago saw a bit of a video playing. We were just testing the audio because on previous Shuttle Sundays we sometimes had audio issues with these old videos from VHS. Because I've got my VHS recorder literally by the side of me now. I press play on tape and it comes through the internet. That's how we do these short videos. Seriously, yeah. No, all right. Moving on. So you know the routine by now. This is live in Space Coast Live. That's every Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We do a Shuttle Sunday. We do the show live, as the famous meme would go. But we also record it. So a lot of people tend to watch it back and they're wondering why we're answering questions and saying thanks to people. It's because we are live right now. So those of you in right now live, watching this on Space Coast Live, have the ability to do that NASA spaceflight and then follow it by a question. And that will go into our panel and we'll try and answer them best we can. Do try and keep it on Shuttle though. Don't go asking Polaris Dawn questions or anything like that. Just keep it on Shuttle because that's what the show's about this time. You've got plenty of opportunities to ask other questions on other subjects in our live streams when we're not doing a special show like this. But thankfully, it's not just me rambling on for an hour. I'd probably be over an hour with this one. We've also got Sawyer Rosenstein. Hello, Roy. Sawyer, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be back with Shuttle Sunday, and this is a very unique one. This isn't your ordinary Shuttle Sunday, you might say. Oh, no, wait, that's Starlinks.
Also joined us is Jack. Say hello, Jack.
Hello, Jack.
Every time. Every time. So, yes, we have 3 missions to go through. I'll tell you why we're doing these 3 together. Because you could technically do the abort to orbit one on its own. There's a lot going on there. But we're doing these 3 missions because that clears us for the following Shuttle Sunday to be dedicated to the best shuttle of the fleet, Atlantis. Which we all agree with, don't we, Sawyer and Jack? We all agree Atlantis is the best orbiter in the fleet.
Yep, best orbiter, hands down, no question, no arguments, no dissenting allowed.
I like to keep my job, so yes.
You
Sure.
can't disagree.
Okay, good. Endeavor best shuttle.
Because there'll be people, I guarantee you, there's someone in the comment section, when this video goes published on the site, someone will go into the comments and go, excuse me, I was looking forward to Shuttle Sunday, but unfortunately Chris Bergen ruined it by claiming that Atlantis was the best shuttle. How can you claim such a thing? It is a personal preference. That's what everyone does. That's their favourite orbiter. Because technically Columbia was the best one, and then Discovery because of the flagship. But moving quickly on, let's cover
leave it in the
fir-
comments if you're watching later. Let me know what your
that's a
favorite
point.
is.
Actually, that is not a bad point, sir. Yes, you do. Please do that. Leave it in chat right now if you're live. And also, when you're watching the recording of this, put it in a comment in the video of which one is your favourite show and maybe why as well. Try and validate it.
Do you want me to do a poll while you get things started,
We can't do a poll, no, because we haven't got enough poll options for all the orbiters to be fair to them all. So we can't really do that, yeah.
I'm going to send an angry email to YouTube.
Send an angry email to YouTube, yeah. So let's start with this one. This is STS-51-G. Sawyer, maybe we can just overview this one as I start throwing up some lovely photographs.
Sure. So STS-51-G, it was a 7-day mission, and this one made history with one of the people flying on board, and that was Sultan bin Salman Al Saud, who was the first astronaut from Saudi Arabia, was the first Muslim in space, and the first member of a royal family in space. And this was also the first shuttle mission that had only shuttle-era crew members in it. Patrick Baudry, who was French, was the second French astronaut to fly into space. And this one had a whole bunch of different communication satellites on it. You had Arabsat 1B, you had Morelos 1 from Mexico, and Telstar 303. You also had all of them that used the PAM-D that we've talked about before, the Payload Assist Module, to get them into space. There was also some cool science experiments on board, including testing a furnace in space to prove that it worked, and eventually try and get results about making different magnetic composites in space. A lot of fluid experiments, some of them about fluid sloshing, excuse me. You got specific ones for the Saudi Arabian astronauts to take pictures of Saudi Arabia and different fluid experiments. It was a very science-heavy mission and still managed to deploy all those payloads.
Sorry, I need to go back a little bit there. Let's rewind a little bit there. A furnace in space.
Yep,
Now, are we talking
exactly.
about the ability to do hot meals on the orbiter, or are we talking about something else here?
No, we'll get to cold drinks later in today's show, but no, this was a different kind of furnace, and it's not like the Minecraft furnace either. It's meant to test, again, like I was saying, different kinds of metals and things to see how well they combined. It was called the Automated Directional Solidification Furnace, the ADSF.
Blimey. I'll tell you one thing, this is kind of like Sawyer's really good there, overview of this mission. Kind of shows you where they were going with Shuttle. They wanted to use it for multiple things. This is not like a one-off. A lot of people, and I forgive them for it, think that the Shuttle would go up, pop a few payloads out, and come back down again. And there's like a lot of money for all that, a lot of risk. There were so many things to do on a mission. It was ridiculous. And you can go through some of the mission reports. It's pretty much a stable for all of the missions, especially around this time. They were trying to pack in as much as possible. Remember, this is before the ISS. There was no space station. So everything they were learning microgravity-wise was on the orbiter. And it was starting to earn its keep a little bit. I mean, it never got anywhere close to what they anticipated. But yeah, it's important to know that. Jack, look what's still there. The crane.
Yeah, the crane. I was about to. You beat me to it. I was about to bring it up. I mean, we're gonna keep our eye on it as we keep going through these missions and see if it goes anywhere. If it was.
We just lost Jack. Jack just disappeared with all the crane talk.
Am I still here?
You're now back, Jack. Yes, you just
Okay.
completely cut off for no reason whatsoever there.
Go figure. Sorry, I'm having internet issues. There's like storms and stuff in Starbase. Anyways, crane, interesting. We'll see if it sticks around as we go through all these missions.
I did actually talk to my greybeard friend. I know exactly what happens to it, but I'm waiting until we get to the mission where the crane goes, and then we'll talk about it. But yeah, I did get an answer to all that.
Small spoiler. Will we learn today, or will it be on a future shuttle?
I'm
shuttle
not
Sunday?
saying. No spoilers.
Oh, come on. You can't tease us like that.
I bloody well can. And by the way, what an awesome photograph. And Jack, I say every single Shuttle Sunday. Amazing.
Yeah,
this is the 80s.
I mean, I am 100% here for Shuttle, but also for all of these historical images. They're absolutely fantastic. And likely, I mean, again, it's the 80s, so you can bet that this was shot on film, which is just a whole other ball of wax. I mean, remote cameras are hard enough, but a film remote camera, that's quite challenging, at least in this day and age when we're all used to digital. Really beautiful image.
Look at the
Yeah,
reflection.
and you don't
as
get the
well.
satisfaction of looking at your camera afterwards at remote pickup and going, yes, I got the shot.
Oh yeah, of course.
I may have screamed very loud many times at various launch pads in a professional manner upon seeing successfully captured images on my cameras.
Ditto.
That is gorgeous. You got the gray
Wow.
worm there. You got the RS-25, Space Shuttle main engine exhaust with the delicious blue forbidden ice cream cones. Can't go wrong.
Really awesome. And by the way, there is actually, I think it's the final mission we're covering. When I was pulling all the resources of L2, because L2, I mean, obviously there's public photographs for all the missions out there. We know that. But we also have a lot of photographs that were either lost from the internet and they're on people's literally photographs and postcards, and they've scanned them and put them in L2. And then there's personal photographs from the missions as well, which people have been like, oh yeah, I went to that mission. Here's a photograph. Do you want to put in L2? So we get a real nice collection out of it. And I was pulling the collection for the third mission we're going to cover on this Shuttle Sunday, and I was like, oh my word. So that's something to look forward to. Don't turn that dial. I'm going very old school here. Right? Don't turn that dial. We have got a lot more after the abort to orbit one to come, photographic-wise, because there's some beautiful ones, really are. Anyway, more shuttle launch photographs from this STS-51-G mission. Again, birds, by the way, no ranting on X about the birds there, because Elon wasn't in charge and he wasn't all over X. So it's kind of like, this is, you know what, I do bring it up. Sorry, you'll back me up this because you go there so many times. It's on a nature reserve. And no one said boo to a goose about, apart from when they were trying to launch, was it the nuclear stage? And everyone's like, no nukes, no nukes. But there's been no real kind of like, oh no, the birds. But until Starbase, as if Starbase was the first launch site on an environmental area, it's like, so's KSC.
I should mention then that there is video of a shuttle absolutely destroying a bird on
Yes.
liftoff.
That's a future shuttle Sunday and a half. That one. Poor
Yeah.
turkey vultures get absolutely destroyed by Discovery.
Which one
But
was the
yeah, I mean,
frog? Was the frog also Shuttle?
That was
no,
Wallops,
that
wasn't it?
was Antares.
Okay, okay.
It
Minotaur.
was the space
Yeah.
bat.
Was it a Minotaur or an Antares? I think it was Minotaur. Yeah, it was Wallops. I know it was
Oh
Wallops.
yeah,
and
no, that was Laddie. You're right. Yeah.
yeah. And the frog is literally, bless it, it probably didn't survive, but it looked like it was like, I'm going to space too. It's
I
like,
mean, if you're gonna go,
Yeah,
it's not a
there
bad way
was
to go.
there was the bat on the shuttle external tank though. That was another one. But yeah, driving into the Kennedy Space Center, I have had to stop for alligators crossing the road, turtles crossing the road. There's a whole bunch of eagle nests. So it's the contradiction of nature versus science there. It's really cool.
Well, good thing is they can coexist. Also, check out the wait, go back, Chris, go back.
oh,
I just
going back.
solid motors are not great in a variety of ways, especially for a crewed vehicle, but photogenically compared to a completely liquid fueled rocket where there's no plume like that. It's just so beautiful to see shots like this, especially from the air where you can see the plume trailing and it's just a completely different look and a completely different vibe. And that's why anytime ULA or anybody launches a rocket with solids, I'm like, ooh, we're gonna get some good photos off of that one.
Yep. Here we go. Look at this one. Obviously, that's the NASA photograph. That's from the pad. But it's just like, it's probably one of the first things you'll see on someone's wall if they're just getting into spaceflight. Maybe not now. Maybe it's been taken up by Starship and what have you. And I don't blame people for that. And I think probably a very good thing as well, because that's probably going to be more encouraging. That the flight rate is so much that these people who are getting into spaceflight now, I've got a lot to look forward to. But
Right.
in my era, this would probably be like if I got a first shuttle poster, it'd probably something like this.
I've
You
seen
want
the
to know?
poster.
You want to know what kind of nerd I was? I had an entire wall of my bedroom with Shuttle. It was like it was wallpaper that you could buy from one of the home improvement stores, and it was. I really wish I knew what shuttle it was, but it was a space shuttle in orbit over the Earth. Was like the entire one wall of my room, and then the ceiling was covered in those like glow in the dark star stickers you could put all over the ceiling. I was a nerd. I'm still a nerd. Yay, Shuttle.
Nice. I'm gonna throw a few mission photographs in here, but then play a video. Now, anyone who's used to Space Shuttle Sunday, you first of all got the crane reference because we were all looking back on the old. When did the crane turn up, and when did it leave? Because it's not there anymore. That's something we've had a routine with Shuttle Sunday. And one thing we also do now is we play a mission video. We used to play the launch and landing video, but that was kind of benign. Whereas the crew talking over their mission, even though it's like a long video and we skip through it quite a bit, is a lot more fun because that adds more personality to it. So that's what we'll do on these 3 missions as well. We'll have the crew talking about their mission. But there's a few more photographs while I'm here. Let me open this full screen. I've got to learn how to make my thing always open at the same size. That's one of the payload deploys. There we go. With the PAM. Is that another PAM motor on that one, Sawyer?
They were
I think
all
so.
PAM-Ds. Yep.
Yeah.
Are these the ones that like spin up as they exit the shuttle bay?
You'll
Like,
see on the video, Jack. You
love
hold
that.
your horses. The video will
It's-
show you the deployments in video form.
it's so iconic. Let's go.
Check out the old the old mission control room. That is real old school. I mean, we're talking that's the era we're in during this mission. It's the same rooms, but they've completely outfitted it several times since, by the way. Because I remember when it was all kind of blue and it was still the CRT monitors and what have you. Then they moved to the flat screens and it was like real fancy as it is right now. But it just shows you. I mean, look at this computer. I always look at computers like, oh my god, that's old.
Just retro fantastic. Giant CRT monitors, not a flat screen in sight. The actual display up front is I've watched some YouTube videos on how these displays worked. It's like some really complicated projection stuff. Like, it's not a flat screen. Those didn't quite exist back then.
And this is upgraded from the Apollo. I mean, remember, Apollo even goes further back than this. And that's someone in chat mentions no tobacco. Yeah, they were all like ashtrays everywhere. It's like not that anymore. But that's
Yeah,
just,
that room probably did not smell very great.
No, it wouldn't. No.
No.
Right, that's really cool. Let's try and find where I've hidden my video because I know it's
I
in
believe
this.
it looks like one of the
There it is.
Saudi officials visiting as well.
Yes, which makes sense as well because obviously this has been an historic first time they've flown. It's quite interesting, the Saudis, because they do have quite a lot of interest in spaceflight right now, but they've kind of gone quiet. But I'm wondering if they've got some real cool missions being cooked up in the background, because I know they were getting very ambitious at one point, especially with their landers. So I'm expecting big things from them in the future. They've certainly got the money for it. Right, video time. This is where everyone in chat tells me they can hear the audio of the video, and I go quiet. So let me know in chat. It might take a few seconds for the audio to come through, so to give it a chance. But then we'll see if it works. Because if not, I'm going to shout at Jay. Yes, I am.
Now over to Jo.
Well, being one of the rookies on this flight, they wanted me to sort of describe what it was like to get up in the middle of the night and walk out with all kinds of photographers waiting for you and flashing lights to make you blind when you tried to stumble into the trailer, and then we were on our way. It was a short 4 or 5 mile trip, and it's an eerie feeling when you get into that vehicle and there's nobody else around. Main engine ignition lasts for about 6 seconds. You can feel the vibration in the vehicle. Fortunately, we couldn't see all the smoke and steam and fire coming out the back end. Gimbal the engines just before takeoff after they're lit, and when you lift off, you'll be able to see the shock waves in the main engines. T0, the hold-down bolts are blown, and the SRB is light, and we're on our way. I personally got a chance to see the tower glide by out my peripheral vision, and then the roll shortly after tower clear, and if you look closely there, you can see the diamond shock waves in the exhaust of the main engines. John Young said after he came back from Flight 1 and saw in the movies of that this year, was glad he couldn't see all that flame and smoke, or he'd been a whole lot more concerned during liftoff. That's a bit of a rough ride during the first 2 minutes and 11 seconds of the flight, in which the solid rockets are burning. We're about to go supersonic. If you look closely, you can see the shock waves forming on both the SRB and the orbiter itself. This is the first time, to my knowledge, that the shock waves have engulfed the whole back of the orbiter itself. They go all the way from the cockpit all the way back to the tail. We were fortunate to have a very clear day. 2 minutes and 11 seconds, we had SRB SEP. From the cockpit point of view, there was a loud bang and a flash of light across the windscreen, and it left an opaque film on the windows, which made looking straight out the forward windows somewhat more difficult for the rest of the ascent, although I was spending most of my time watching the gauges inside. And after the main engine burnout at Miko, about 8 minutes and 30 seconds into the flight, we got our first real look at the world gliding by outside. Spectacular sight.
The first day on orbit, we deployed Morelos, Hughes telecommunication satellite for Mexico. This is the first telecommunication satellite which Mexico owns, and we'll be flying again with us late next year. The deployment of a PAM and telecommunication satellite is really a crew effort, and it takes an integrated teamwork by 5 folks in order to get one of these things off and to document it. Here you can see John Creighton in the right seat up there piloting the orbiter and pointing it, and I'm talking through the orbiter's general purpose computer to the satellite, which is back in the bay. Shannon Lucid is operating the standard switch panel, which controls the ordnance on the booster. Shannon's not real fond of this camera angle, as you can see. Meanwhile, Dan is overseeing the entire operation, and Steve Nagel is getting all the photo documentation. And there's Morelos coming out. It comes out rather smoothly. It's about 2 foot per second separation rate as it tracks right straight up the tail. And we've deployed it retrograde here and inertially, so that a half a rev later, it'll be pointed in the proper direction to go for geosynchronous. Really nice photography here with the zoom capability to pick this guy out. This is a deployment of ArabSat, deployed for a consortium of Arab nations which comprise the Arab League. And again, you can see there's a level of intensity here associated with doing one of these deployments. We recognize the importance of these things and their value. And here's ArabSat going out. It's built by Aerospatiale, a French corporation, and it looks, of course, considerably different than the other satellite which we had for Hughes.
ArabSat is, as a matter of fact, operating very well now in geosynchronous orbit, and that's when I started breathing again, is when it came out of the shuttle. So it's doing very well, I have to report that.
And Shannon worked on the French echograph, you'll see later, and Sultan was working with me all the time on the posture experiment. And both experiments worked very, very well. And the French scientists, when we came back, were so happy that they could not sleep during 1 week. And we took back such a lot of good data that they could not believe.
He was the cleanest crew member on board, far and away. You know, I'd be finished by now if I were washing my face. Shannon would be finished by now if it were her. We had to cut this. You're only seeing about 10%.
We were already closing in on it on the V-bar, which we're at about 200 feet, and he's zooming in a little bit here. But the whole rendezvous went very smoothly. We had a little bit of a eye-opener at one of our burns where we had 2 jets fail, but we had practiced those in simulations so often that we went right through that with no problem. We closed in on it. Here you can see the sun setting in the background. We still don't have the explanation as to why, but Spartan did not end up in the exact attitude we expected it, so we had to do a little real-time planning up there into how we anticipated grabbing a hold of it, and essentially what we did was fly it a little bit forward in the payload bay and a little bit lower, and then John could, by moving the arm, could reach around behind it.
And here you see the view from the end of the robot arm, the TV camera sitting out on the end effector, as we call it, and the grapple target right there in front of you. Dan provided, as you can tell here, a very stable platform from which to operate the robot arm, and it's a very capable system. And this, I think, indicates that things don't have to be perfect in order to use this mechanism. And we were obviously overjoyed when we finally picked it up.
Re-entry is not quite as spectacular as launch, but when you are coming through the air at around Mach 20 to 22 and you start getting the rosy glow, it's really spectacular. John was also taking some pictures looking out the back, and maybe he can describe to you what he's seeing.
This is looking out the overhead window, and the tail of the vehicle is not in sight. What you're seeing here is simply the interaction of shock waves around the vehicle converging up over the top of the spacecraft and making that very intense picture. And then back to the glow on the windows with very intense heat outside the glass.
Coming across California, we were heading east into a rising sun, so once again we couldn't see anything due to the haze on the windows, but once we got partway around the hack, as you see here, I could make out the runway. We'd decided to go to runway 23 as a result of the predicted winds, and as we rolled out on final, the winds were a crosswind, so you can try and predict wind, but you aren't always going to hit it correctly. At that point, it was too late to change runways, and we continued on to the lake bed runway 23. The vehicle, as has been said before by previous commanders who have flown it, handles very well, and even in a crosswind you probably have to work a little more at it, but it still is a very precise flying machine, and all the training we get in the shuttle training aircraft certainly helps, because you can see the gear come down here when you do your first landing. It's got to be a good one for real the first time. It's good to have all that training behind you, and you feel confident that everything is going to work out just fine, as it did in this case. We touched down and pretty lightly bounced just a little bit, got the nose down, and we'd, by design, tried to do almost a max braking. They wanted 10 to 12 foot per second braking rate as we touched down. The lake bed was a little bit soft, and you can see when we start getting on the binders, there's a pretty good cloud of dust being kicked up behind it. We, I guess, have the record now for the shortest stop from wheels down to stop was 7,400 feet, and the braking profile was right on what they expected. It varied between 10 and 12 foot per second, almost all the way to touchdown. I mean, all the way to stop.
There we go. That was fun. Did you notice during the landing part of that video, you could see the RCS? There's a few videos, not many. There's a few landing videos where they get a good long-range tracker, and you can see puffs of smoke coming out the back of the orbiter. That is actually, they're still using RCS for control then. And then they start using the aero surfaces more and more until the point is when they're coming back down like an airplane, albeit a fast, steep decline of an airplane. They're coming down using just the aero surfaces.
Also, that landing, as they were just talking about there, that plume was crazy, and you really see the deceleration on it. I believe that record was beaten later in the shuttle program of the shortest landing, but that 7,000 feet is crazy.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. These Edwards landings are just so beautiful. And again, I'm just going to say it every time. If I had a time machine, this would be one of my first stops. No question.
Yeah, apparently.
Also,
I'm
how do
getting
you get
elevator
music?
music. It's not through my headphones, or not through my microphone, not that much straight away.
It's the happy, successful landing music. I don't know.
I have no idea where they're hearing that music because there's nothing in my ears and nothing coming through my microphone. I've just taken my headphones off to check. There we go. Jay is having fun. Jay's having a lot of fun. Dear me.
It's about to get real fun now.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next mission because I think we'll be re-editing this shuttle video when it goes live. I know when it goes unpublished, and not much straight away. Is go to this folder here, which is STS-51-F. So 1 second, bear with me.
We are bearing.
In fact, we can start talking about the next mission while I try and find the folders for this one.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you could be please.
Sure. STS-51-F was the Space Lab 2 mission, which was ESA's, or part of the science experiments that they were doing. They had the Space Lab attached. They were also doing some experiments for ESA on there. This was one of those missions where they were split into teams of 2. So you had blue team and red team, so that there was science going on basically 24 hours a day for the entirety of the mission. The mission was expected to be like 7-8 days. It could have been extended to 9 days. So it just worth noting there, Starliner is the only one where they said 8 days, but maybe it could go longer. Albeit this one did not go on for 3 months.
I
So
freaking
there was-
love Space Lab. Like, I will forever be bummed that Shuttle did not make it operational in time to save Skylab. But at the very least, we got Space Lab, which is still really cool.
Oh yeah,
So,
and this
we're
one.
gonna do. Go ahead, Sawyer.
Oh no, I was just gonna say a lot of the focus on this one actually was astronomy more so than the usual physics and fluid experiments. There was a lot of things to look at the sun, a couple ultraviolet inspectors, an X-ray telescope portion, and some of the palettes, infrared as well, helium experiments, and as I'm sure we'll discuss in a bit, the continuation of the Cola Wars.
Let's have a look at some launch photographs, shall we? Because it all looked very nominal, didn't it? The crane's still there, Jack.
You're just. I want to know, and I'm not going to look it up. I will not.
Yeah.
It's like we're watching a movie, and I'm not going to look up how it ends, but I want to know.
Another awesome photograph there of launch. Look, you can really see the RS-25s, and the difference between the SRB plumes and the RS-25 is pretty obvious. They're liquid engines and solid engines. But really, that's one of the best photographs. Well, not one that it's one of the best photographs. There's even better ones, would you believe? But that is
Yeah,
an awesome
and-
photograph.
Yeah, and that launch itself ended up being delayed because of malfunction in the second shuttle main engine coolant valve. So, thankfully, that was the only issue with engines this flight.
Well,
Ha ha ha.
Sorry, I mean all three look all good there, don't they? All
They
three
look
engines look fine,
fantastic there.
especially
not-
that sensor one.
They
Yeah.
not only look fantastic, but they're so hard to photograph, especially when they're right next to something as bright as the solid rocket booster plumes. So to be able to see not only the shock diamonds coming off the shuttle main engines, but also like that really faint, like pinkish glow coming off the engines is really beautiful as well. And especially as we go through these launches, like multiple in a shuttle Sunday, and we can sort of see the same shot from the same camera placement of different missions. It's really fascinating to me to see. Ooh,
the
look at the
flag
plume and the
shot.
flag.
You
Also-
love, you photographers love the flag shots, don't you?
Yeah, but look
Yeah.
really closely here. This doesn't always happen with the plumes, but if you look closely, you can see that diagonal dark streak that sort of
Oh.
starts near where the plume starts to bend over and
Oh.
goes all the way down to the bottom of the frame. That's the shadow from the plume.
Yep.
Sometimes
that-
when conditions
Oh.
are right, you get you can see the shadow that the plume is casting on the background cloud. Yeah,
It is
it's a
so
really
hard
cool
to
phenomena.
capture.
Yeah, it is.
You know what? That's two photographers on with me. That's obvious because I hadn't noticed that. I was too busy looking at the flag and plume. Flag and plume. That's very pretty. Didn't notice that. I'm using my cursor. I might be out of sync with my voice and pointing my cursor, but I'll get there eventually because that is where the shadow is, and I hadn't noticed that before. So that is awesome. And
Also, why does
also,
it sound like the name of a pub? The Flag and Plume.
probably because you watched too many 80s TV shows with fake English accents, Sawyer.
Now I want fish and chips.
Yeah. Going down to the pub and flag. This person here, Jenny Howard, is going to be the center of attention very shortly. She's at the
Legend.
booster console. By the way, the booster console, that's how it works, right? They've got all the readouts. That is point person for the main engines and the SRBs, and the main propulsion system, in fact, as well. In her ear are controllers in a back room for MPS, main propulsion system, I can't speak now, SRBs, and main engines. And in their ears are all a team behind them. There's a massive team involved. So those three team leaders are talking to Jenny. And Jenny is then talking to the flight director. The flight director, with any instructions to the crew, will go to the Capcom. The Capcom will talk to the crew. Important things to remember there, because this, and when we get to STS-93, my word, you'll see it in action big time, right? That's a way away Shuttle Sunday, but that is where it gets crazy professional, because they are like going backwards and forwards in my ear, but still talking and still in my ear. I mean, if that was me, I would have been like in my backroom Discord going, I can't deal with this. Like I do most days, like I was doing during that video, which doesn't play audio, because it's just like there's so much going on, but they're trained for it and they're so good at it. Anyway, enough of that. Let's keep doing some more photographs. I'm thinking of another one of Jenny. Yeah, there we go. I wonder why she's involved with this photograph, because that is the mission complete photograph, and Jenny Howard, the booster controller, is front and center. It'll all become very clear very soon.
Oh,
Trust me on that. More launch photographs. Here we go. I'm skipping, but I don't want to play the video by mistake. There we go. More plume shots. Cool, because you can see 39A's right down here. Right, and it's there, you know, you can see where they've ignited. Basically, this is good. It's 20, 25 seconds after launch, maybe. And it's still all there. It's like it's like riding a pillar of smoke. That's the SRBs in play. Because, as you know, boys and girls, the RS-25s are liquid engines. And although they are cloud-making machines, and Mashoud like to say, never call it a rain machine. It literally is water vapor. So this is where the dirty SRBs are making most of this plume here. You can actually see the difference in color. Look at that.
Yeah,
and
that's
that reflection again, or the shadow.
Yeah.
The shadow. I'm going to be constantly looking for shadows now.
You'll notice it more often now, Chris. It's a really interesting phenomenon when it comes to launches. And speaking of interesting phenomena, we do have a question here from Flawed Perspective. Why don't SRBs have mock diamonds? I think it just comes down to the solids are a less efficient burn, and they're also, as you can see by the plume there, it's a really particulate laden exhaust. So it's like not as high efficiency. It might come down to even nozzle design with the SRBs.
A lot of chemicals too.
Well, remember, all you see, I mean, there's no clear path for you to see any diamonds, because it literally is all fire. Yeah. If you watch those slow-mo, in fact, I will show one on a future Shuttle Sunday or a future Raptor, something like that. I've got brilliant videos of it in L2 of super slow-mo. I have to say that because it's all the supers involved. There's that many supers. Super slow-mo video of SRB test. My brain's going already. Of a SRB test in Utah, and you can see the shockwave of ignition. It blows out the plug, which is sealant on the end of the nozzle, sends the plug flying in debris, and then you see what could be classed maybe at the start of a Mac Diamond, but then it is completely engulfed by the fire of the actual motor. So I wonder, you know what? I have a very, very good friend of mine who works with Northrop Grumman, used to work with ATK, the same company, just different names. who I could ask that question to. I'm going to get on that.
I would be really interested to know. I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist or engineer, so I'm purely guessing. But yeah, I bet it comes down to dirty plume, nozzle design, and just speed of the propellants. But yeah, I would love to know from someone smarter than me. Also, Chris, really quickly, I did spam in chat a link. We have been to Promontory, Utah, and filmed a SRB test about 2 years ago. Thanks to Northrop Grumman inviting us out and letting us put cameras super close. So if you've never seen this video that we put out, it is up close camera views of that SRB test, and you can see the nozzle gimbling and you can see the dirty plume, and it's exposed in such a way that you can actually see the plume. Because in a lot of these photos, because the SRBs are so bright, in order to expose properly for everything else in the frame, you have to basically expose in a way that the SRBs are just completely white. But in the absence of anything else, if you really knock down the exposure on the camera, you can see detail in the plume, but alas, no mock diamonds. Anyways, continue.
Yes, I did notice the spamming, and I appreciate the spamming because that is a good video as well. But also, I'm going to do some spamming in a minute because the abort to orbit of this mission, I've highlighted the engines here because it's a center engine, the one at the top. If you're looking at this view on your screen, it's the one on the farthest right-hand side near the tail, right? That is the engine that shuts down, and then you have to call for an abort to orbit. Now, there's lots of videos, public videos on there, but there's a channel called Lunar Module 5, who I'm a big fan of, and it also includes Mark Kirkman, who's a big NSF fan from the start. He was one of the first people on our forum. Involved in the creation of this video clip I'm going to show you. It's just a clip of it. I'm going to spam their channel, and I'll make sure it's linked in the comments on the published video of this version of this video as well, because they are great, do a lot of great work and not for a lot of attention as well. So it's very important that I give them some attention. So I'm going to spam this link first, then I'm going to play the video clip. It's only a clip of their video. They did the entire launch and landing on this format. But let me just line it up and see if it plays video. Can you hear audio?
5 nautical miles, velocity 11,000 feet per second.
We copy, stand by.
Flight Fido, abort ATO. Abort ATO.
We have a center engine down.
Abort ATO. Abort ATO.
Mission Control, Houston, we have a center engine down on the Challenger. The crew has been instructed to abort to orbit.
Challenger, Houston, single engine TAL capability.
Single engine TAL.
Roger that, and main engine limits to enable, Gordo.
Okay.
Right, I'm pausing there. I'm pausing there because there's two parts to this, and we're about halfway through.
Yeah, there's a lot of call-outs to sort of rock here.
So we're gonna go through that first because I think that's important, because the mitigation of this issue gets really important, because this could have been a lot worse.
Oh yeah.
As we'll talk about. Right. And Sawyer's so on board right now. It's unbelievable. Sawyer's practically right next to me right now going, oh yes. This is brilliant, right? So this is the only time in the space shuttle program this ever happened. The one reference we make when people go, RS-25s, they're old engines. Why is this less launch with old engines? We go, hang on a minute. The heritage of the RS-25 is amazing. It only ever had one problem, and that was during this mission right now. At this point, we had the center engine shut down, and it called for an abort to orbit. Abort to orbit means you can continue on, keep going, keep firing. You'll fire longer, because obviously you're down to 2 engines, not 3. You're going to fire longer, but you'll eventually you'll still get to the orbit. If they'd lost another one, we're looking at a transatlantic abort to Spain, because they're really going to struggle with one engine remaining. It's not going to happen. The mission's going to be over. So that's where it gets really serious. Now, you'll hear the call out, and we'll talk about this first, Sawyer. The call is abort to orbit. The crew on board flick some switches. The shuttle automatically, the computers all go into that mode. They also say main engines are limits to enable. And that is where the SSMEs are now. The computer can decide, look, if I'm having problems with the other SSMEs, I'm going to shut one of those down as well. And that could be a problem. Should we talk about that first, Sawyer, that call for enable? Why did they go to enable to start with?
Well, to go to enable to start with, hang on, sorry, my head just went blank all of a sudden.
It's fun because it is kind of that's kind of when I was thinking, when I look back and thought, hang on, they made the call to go to enable first. That's weird. But it also kind of lines up, it sets up Jenny M. Howard joining in and saying, I've got a feeling, because remember the flight director, he's reacting directly to the crew saying, we've got a center engine down on the orbiter. And that is the procedure to go to: abort to orbit, enable. And then it's the fault with the SSME in question, where it could be a chain reaction to the other engines where they're thinking, well, don't let the computer shut that one down for that sensor fault because it's not needed. So that's where it kind of, if I've explained that right, Sawyer.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly it. Basically, so it's a way to kind of ignore that, but obviously it's still keeping an eye on all the other engines. And if it does see a problem, if it gets past that red line monitor, if it gets to that certain point, then it will start shutting down other engines if needed. And I think it's also probably a good thing to note the different abort modes that they have.
Oh, yes.
So there's actually a knob that they twist in. Yep, go ahead.
No, I was completely agree with you. I thought it's a really good idea. Let's talk about the other abort modes: RTLS, abort to orbit, abort once around, TAL. Let's talk about those 4 abort options.
Yeah, so there's actually a little knob that they turn inside the shuttle for those abort modes, but RTLS is very different from the RTLS we know of now with SpaceX and Falcon. This one, you couldn't do any of these, by the way, until the SRB separated. As soon as they did, RTLS was one of the most dangerous ones possible, because basically you would have to completely flip all the way around, dispose of the external tank into the ocean, and then try to make it back to the shuttle landing facility. And basically, it was a near zero chance of survival on those. They were avoided at all costs. Then you have the TAL modes. So that's the transoceanic abort. So basically, they would go and they would land somewhere overseas. The main sites were Zaragoza, Spain. There was also one in, trying to remember the other location in Spain. Morone, that was it.
Yes.
There was also Istres Air Base in France and RAF Fairford in England. Those were the 4 main ones that they used. And as you heard there, they could still reach those with engines out. So if they were to only have one engine available, as you heard there, they could still make it to one of the transatlantic abort sites. Then you get to abort once around, where basically you limp your way into a single orbit, make your way around, and then go right back into a landing. And last but not least, abort to orbit, where you could still make it into orbit, just a much lower orbit.
Right, so what you're going to hear next is assessing the situation. Obviously, in Jenny Howard's ear will be main engines, which is literally a person with a back room themselves. And that person is relaying to Jenny Howard as booster controller what they found was wrong with the center engine, why it was shut down. And that's when Jenny Howard takes over and says, this is what we, and she's saying, keep a close eye on it. You'll hear her talking. It's pretty amazing. It's the female voice in this. You can't miss it. Just listen to how the flight director is like, I am totally listening to you and I'm going with whatever you say. And rightly so. It's amazing teamwork. So here we go. Mute microphone and play video.
Main engine cutoff time now at an MET of 9 minutes, 41 seconds. Crew can still get to Zaragoza should they lose another engine. However, we still have 2 stable Space Shuttle main engines. Center engine is down, however, and they've been instructed to this point to abort to orbit.
Sensor problems. We've failed another sensor. I'm tempted to go inhibit it. I know there's single engine capability.
Are we past Cal, Fido? Yes, we are, Fido. Limits to inhibit.
Challenger, Houston, main engine limits to inhibit.
Okay, inhibit.
We'll keep a good close eye on it.
Okay, which deuces are you having trouble with?
It's the fuel turbine
Mission Control,
temp.
Houston, 9 minutes, missed the last time, altitude 58.3 nautical miles, distance downrange 789 nautical miles.
Keep an eye on it for you.
Okay, 3K.
Velocity now 21,969 feet per second.
So there you go. You can hear the call. Jenny Howard's got more information on what's causing the issue with the center engine, and it's sensors. It's the fuel turbine temp sensor, and that is something they've lost one sensor on the other engine as well. So there's a fault where if they lose the other sensor on that other engine, that engine's going to shut down if the engines are still unable, because the computer will see it and go, I'm not happy, I'm shutting it down. And down to a single engine, and that's a transatlantic abort scenario. So Jenny and Howard, knowing the issue with the center engine is a sensor, and knowing the sensor issues on the other engine as well, but it's still performing fine, says inhibit, which stops the computer shutting that engine down. And basically, she saved the mission. Serious, simple as that, Sawyer. Would you agree? She literally saved the mission.
Oh, 100%. If they had another engine go out, again, you heard them. Do we still have TAL capability? They would have been landing in Spain. So it was a brilliant idea to realize, okay, this isn't the engine. This is very likely now a sensor issue. So forget it. Ignore the sensors. We'll monitor everything here and let's just go for it.
Yep. I've got a mission video. I will skip through quite a lot of this because it's very long. The irony is they do not even mention this. The crew do not mention anything wrong with the launch. I wonder if there's some kind of like 80s NASA kind of like don't start talking about faults in play here. I found that fascinating because I went back on this crew review mission thinking, all right, they're going to talk about how, Jenny Howard was great for them and how the controllers were all on their back, sort of like had their backs, and there's nothing. There's nothing at all. It's like, what? Did I get the right mission video? It's the right mission video. Anyway, I'll play it. So I'm going to mute the microphone again. Now we've got sound on video. It's amazing. Stand by.
Of any space flight is getting your patch designed so that 7 people are happy with it, and then the higher management to approve. Once that hurdle was over, it was easy from there. We're now headed out of the crew quarters at the Kennedy Space Center into the van that takes us to the pad. The main engines ignited and kept running on July 29th. And solids then lit 6 seconds after the main engines ignited. And when that happens, as you've heard many times, there's no doubt that you're on your way wherever those solids want to go.
One of the interesting things is a dramatic difference between the ride with the solids on and when the solids go away. It gets really quiet and smooth on those main engines. But should have heard the Texas yells in the midday when we got off the pad. Just excited to say the least. Out here, you really know you're going somewhere, but that's no threat because that's what the business is all about.
We're on the solids for 2 minutes and 5 seconds to be exact, and there's a very noticeable decrease in acceleration as they start to burn out. But there's a beautiful day down there, and afforded the chance to get this is probably as good a shot of the solid rocket separation than as they fell on back toward the ocean that's ever been taken.
As a new guy, I was just starting to get comfortable here when one of those 3 little...
Once those doors are open, you know you're going to stay a while because the radiators are now out and the thermal control system will work.
All of the instruments operated through the keyboards that you see us operating right there, and presumably I was giving the instructions there for the IPS to begin its initial erection, and here we see the IPS coming up from its cradle, from its payload clamps, moving slowly up at about 1 degree per second toward a straight-up position. The first time that happened, it was a really beautiful sight.
Our major objective on the flight was testing of the instrument pointing system. So this was the first step in that process, and it happened early on the first day in orbit.
You can see here the beautiful glints and colors and things. The movie on the TV really doesn't do justice to the prettiness of that payload.
This illustrates one of the...
Once the booms were fully deployed, the wingspan was 9 to 10 feet from tip to tip.
This is a view through the commander's window. We stowed the PDP in a what we called a Solar 1 position, which was forward of the payload bay and over on the sides would be out of the way of the telescopes, and it was more thermally comfortable out there than it would be stowed in the payload bay. So it spent most of the mission just sitting out there.
Tony mentioned earlier that we were firing the electron generator during this period and stimulating the environment, and the PDP was actually measuring it. And so it was good fun. You know, you're actually doing active experiment on the environment up there.
Now we're come to probably the peak of excitement for the pilots of the on-orbital activities, and that's when we released the PDP, and it stayed absolutely stock still, just as it was supposed to, as Tony carefully let go of it and pulled the arm away.
I was in charge of taking the pictures at this point, but they wouldn't give me very much window space, so I had to squeeze in. It was pretty crowded time up there at this moment. And John did an outstanding job. He really had a tough job getting these pictures.
Anything in orbit tended to be interesting, sometimes frustrating, but Tony shows how much fun it was to shave in orbit.
Yeah, but he missed a whole bunch of it, just like same as this morning.
Our brave and honorable pilot was also a great chef. Could put those old plastic pouches in the oven with the best of them, get them out, and always had breakfast prepared for Carl and I, but he never was willing to serve it in bed. Here we have some Mexican scrambled eggs, which were scrambled eggs with some hot sauce on it, coffee, orange juice.
Sausage, I think.
Oh, yes, had some sausage. Sausage tended to flake up in little bits, and you had to chase them around the cabin to try to get your breakfast.
But it was good. It was good.
I think they all deserve licenses now.
Here's our guru here. This is the story doing his...
Demonstrating what happens if you ever drop a cat. It always ends up on its 4 feet, no matter what attitude. And that's
we've had a lot of discussions about how this works. How you can move around. He's not shoveling the air. It's actually he's.
You want me to do it here?
The one on the right, of course, is a magnet, and the one on the left is just a pencil. And we had no idea they were going to decide to mate.
We're still waiting the results of that.
Gordo practicing his landing technique, get ready for re-entry. Looks like we're lost in space there. The way those messages were used, we would cut them up, and you see bits of them tacked all around the orbiter cabin there. We refer to whatever section we needed to at the time to sit down and send our commands from those, what we call the data display units.
Here, Lauren is using 0G to help him get another one of his mini checklists. And you see me gliding up from the middeck, bringing some equipment up and checking on the next maneuver. They were relentless. Also consulting our personal computer, which you see installed on top of the glare shield between the windows. This was a real friend in space. It had a world map mode, which showed us exactly where we were above the Earth.
Also, the place that we could acquire the sun and get the experiments operational in about 5 minutes, which was done, and the real good science for that instrument started at that moment. So it was a happy time, and from then on we knew that we were not going to be judged too harshly because we got some science for at least everybody.
We just had to show you one more sunset on the IPS. We couldn't resist.
He was disturbed. But as we came around on final and rolled out, there it was, runway 23 right in front where it should be. And we were right on the glide slope we should have been on, so things couldn't have looked better. It was a clear but very warm day, some 105 degrees out on the lake bed.
Here I am doing my primary duty on the flight, getting the gear down, which we're very happy to report came down successfully on time.
They got down low, about 10 feet above the ground here, and we were still a little fast, so it flew for some time at 10 feet, waiting for the speed to bleed off to the proper touchdown speed.
And the touchdown was very smooth.
We got the nose down right away. The nose on the orbiter comes down firmly. Nobody had any doubt when the nose came down, although it wasn't alarming. And then we went into our braking profile as planned, which essentially let the airplane coast until we were down to 130 knots. Then applied the brakes moderately hard to stop the airplane, and we used up a total from the end of the runway of about 12,000 feet, a little over 2 miles.
There we go. That's some clipping through, because a lot of that video was them doing fun on orbit, which was kind of like, it's all happy. Ooh, look at us floating around. It's kind of something to continue on the ISS when they ever do like mainstream media interviews. Always ends in a somersault, always. And I'm thinking these astronauts at some point must get sick of being asked to do a somersault. But there was a lot of that on that mission.
Dance, monkey, dance.
I don't think they
really
would
is.
get sick of it, honestly. I did it once and wanted to do it more times when I was in 0G.
Although they might get motion sick of it if they're not careful. Haha. Really quickly, I do want to point out, you might have noticed that this landing is at Edwards. The last mission we talked about was at Edwards. And
Yeah.
if you watched the previous Shuttle Sunday that we did, you'll remember why. And that's because they had a tire popping and a braking issue, and they needed to sort out nose wheel steering on the space shuttle. And so for quite a while, they did Edwards landings before they returned to landing at Kennedy Space Center. So the next several landings are all going to be Edwards, and I'm here for it.
Happy West Coast talk. I'm going to go through some landing photographs. Maybe we can, before we go to the final mission of the Shuttle Sunday, see if we've got any questions from the panel that may want to take.
Yeah, we do. We actually have
cool.
one, right? You want me to do it now?
Yeah, go for it.
We have one from Matrix asking, could this have been a bigger issue, this meaning the engine out, if it was engine 2 or 3 that shut down instead of engine 1? Because engine 1 is that top engine of the triangle of 3. They're asking, maybe would they have had like an asymmetric thrust issue? I'm not an aeronautical engineer, but Sawyer, you're smart about shuttle. Chris, you're smart about shuttle. Do you think there would have been like an asymmetric sort of thrust issue if it had been a different engine? Also, oh my God, that photo.
Sawyer, you take that one, because I'm thinking it doesn't matter. But then I'm pausing thinking maybe it does, because the questions kind of make me think now. So what do you think?
This is just my thought. I don't know exactly, because I'm not good at math, but my assumption is no, because at that point, the shuttle can make up for it with the way that it can gimbal, because those RS-25s have quite a decent gimbal range in them, the ability to steer. So I don't believe that would be an issue. In fact, I don't think abort to orbit would even be considered if that was, wouldn't be an option if that was the case, that they couldn't.
Cool. Jack, planes.
I like planes. Those are T-38s.
Right. What's this one over here? Is that the one with the gun on the front?
The two on the left are T-38s. That's an A-10 Thunderbolt II, the plane that was built around a gun.
And if you that's right, yeah, the one with the gun in the front, yeah.
It's literally a plane that was built around a massive gun. It's like meant to take out tanks and do close air support. It's a really beautiful aircraft. If you don't know about that plane, you should probably learn about that plane. And of course, the shuttle carrier aircraft is a modified 747.
Yep, very good.
Originally from American Airlines.
And looks like there's an F-16 sneaking over in the corner too, just barely. But anyways, moving on.
More landing photographs. Any other burning questions in the back? By the way, can I just thank RC Horseman, who started this off before we even started with 550 memberships, and also Boost 1058 is a gifted membership as well. So thank you for those for doing that, because that's really appreciated. I want to make sure I don't mention.
Yep. Well, I can at least say two things that I want to mention before we finish up with this. First off, Story Musgrave is one of the best astronauts ever. And I don't just mean in person. I mean, his personality, you kind of saw it come through with his little dance moves in there. This was a guy who flew a lot of shuttle missions and was gutsy enough at one point to literally stand up during a shuttle landing later on in his career. Amazing guy.
I think people were asking if it ever took, because there are some camcorder videos. We got a lot in L2, and it's like unedited, 2.5 hours long from deorbit burn all the way through to, in fact, before then, and then to return and then post landing as well. It's literally when they leave the orbiter, they turn the camera off. And that is handheld camcorder, but just stood up from Story Musgrave video would have been amazing if it exists anywhere. I don't think anyone's ever found it. I don't know if he referred to filming while he was doing that, but it was, yeah, there's definitely onboard camcorder videos. And by the way, I will show them on Shuttle Sunday. Don't think I'm like doing an L2 pimp here. We've got amazing content in L2 that we will share on Shuttle Sundays. And when we get to STS-115 and things like that, I'll be sharing a lot of video from that because it is stunning. It really is stunning. And also the call-outs, it's unlike some that got published, is like just the NASA TV over it. We've got the actual crew talking to each other off Fox, which is where they're just talking to themselves, not the controllers. And the conversations are kind of really interesting and fun and relaxed and funny, in fact. So that is something I'll play as well. So that's something to look forward to in the weeks to come.
Yeah, Story, by the way, also the only person to fly on every single one of the shuttle orbiters. And shout out to the fact that he got his bachelor's from my alma mater, Syracuse.
Also, if your name's Story, like, come on, what a cool name.
Is that a Sawyer Flex, by the way?
No, that's just, I mean, I have met him. There's the Sawyer Flex, but the fact that he's also a Syracuse grad is cool. And then there's one payload on this mission. Jack, I know you also want to talk about this one. It was known as the Carbonated Beverage Dispenser Evaluation Payload, or, as it became affectionately known, the Space Cola Wars.
Yeah, if you were not alive at the time or you don't remember this quirky part of history, both Coca-Cola and PepsiCo were trying to outspend each other in terms of marketing, because at a certain point, I guess with selling sugar water, you can only get it in front of people's faces in restaurants and whatnot so much, and at a certain point it just comes down to marketing. Like that ends up being the biggest cost for both Coke and Pepsi. And yes, they sent both Coke and Pepsi up into space.
Yeah, Coke, it was originally just going to be Coca-Cola, and then Pepsi caught wind and said, hey, if they're going up, we're going up. And NASA said, fine, just make sure you get it to us in time. So they spent a lot of money on this. Pepsi said it originally cost $14 million to develop their dispenser. And I believe Coca-Cola spent a few million on theirs as well. And so they brought them up. Interestingly, they brought them on board the orbiter chilled, but there's no fridge on there, so they got to room temperature. And since they were split into red team, blue team, one team tried the Coke, one team tried the Pepsi, and yeah, apparently the flavors tasted exactly as they did on the ground. The only problem is that they're carbonated beverages, and normally gravity helps in terms of moving that carbonation along. So instead of helping to release the gas either up or down, it just sat in their stomachs and they kind of just felt bloated for a very long time. So, yeah, Coke only flew once more to Mir, and that was it.
Do you have any more questions? Sorry.
No, you're good. Also, for the record, not sponsored, but Coke wins.
Actually, no, I disagree. Pepsi Max. Thank you.
No.
Yes.
I think we might need a poll. I'm not.
No, we don't.
I'm not seeing any more questions. Don't forget, chat, if you have any questions as we're talking about things, you can type at NASA Spaceflight in chat and ask your question. We'll see it pop up in a queue we have running in the background.
Jack, I think I'm just getting absolutely wrecked in chat right now. Worst Chris Tech ever. Oh God, no. Team Kirk. Ha ha ha. Dear me. Have I stumbled on something where Americans are all like completely on the Coke side of things? There we go.
No,
don't worry. I'm Team Pepsi.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily an American thing. It's just a personal preference thing wherever you are in the world. I prefer Coke. If you prefer Pepsi, that's okay. But also, you're wrong.
Yeah. Also, you're wrong.
Coke is good. But Pepsi final better. Anyway, let's move on.
Moving on. Final mission, 51I. Yes, it's still crazy configuration of mission order, but there we go. Let's move on to this new mission. This is... Sorry, do you want to go over this one? 51I.
Sure, and I think it's actually quite appropriate that we do this, as just a few months ago we lost the commander of the mission, Joe Engel. This was the 20th space shuttle flight, finally, and this one had a goal of deploying 3 different satellites, and probably the most unique is the second on-orbit repair of a satellite that was planned. So, the launch had the AUSSAT-1 for the Australian government. You had ASC-1 for the American Satellite Company, and LESAT-4 for the U.S. Navy. While they were there, the goal was then to also go and repair LESAT-3. So that's the simple version of what they were mainly doing there, along with, of course, a couple of experiments that were left inside the payload bay and some minor ones that were done on board.
Very good. Here's some launch photographs. Night launch, as you can tell. There we go. And the crane is still there, Jack. I do know when it goes. Not yet.
All right, well,
Look
I
at this
guess I'll just
stuff.
have to wait for the next Shuttle Sunday and see if
I
the
know.
crane
I just want
disappears.
people to hang around. Oh, the third mission must be where the crane goes. Chris has kind of like mentioned it, and he's like, must be the third mission we're talking about. Nope, not yet. Look at the mark diamonds here.
Absolutely beautiful. Just gorgeous.
Look at the dirt on the photograph. Now, I don't know if that's dirt on the lens or the fact that someone scanned that. I think someone scanned that one. And that's where it's like quite dirty. Although, yeah, because look at that. That's like almost like on the actual material, isn't it? Yeah.
It looks like a scan of a dirty frame of film. Whether that was from how it was archived or whether that was from how it was developed, I'm not sure. I bet it's an artifact after the fact once it was scanned.
Now,
look, you can see the shadow, Chris.
Yes, but also people look at plumes and they go, "Oh, was that where it was going all wrong?" That tends to be wind shear, doesn't it, Sawyer? Where the wind shear's got hold of the plume and just bent it out of shape almost.
That's what it looks like, yeah. Because again,
Yeah.
you've got the different layers of where the wind shear is throughout the different parts of the atmosphere. And if you've ever seen any of the kind of maps with the little squiggly lines showing the different layers, that's a great demonstration of just, hey, here's one layer where you've got the wind shear.
Now, the video for this one's going to be fun. I know we're way over time, but we always go way over time. There's 3 missions, to be fair. I was never going to do it in an hour. I'm going to go through a bunch of photographs here from the mission because there's a lot of really cool ones here. This is real fun, this mission. So let's go through these. Let me in. They're the EVA looking through the back of the flight deck windows, the aft flight deck windows, and it really.
There's something a little terrifying about that. Like I
Isn't it?
love
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
image.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
hilarious. Like it's really funny, but it's also there's something about it that's like, yeah, it's a little bit scary. It's like
Oh dear me! Right, here we go through a lot of these. Here's one. Another Pam.
By the way, those were William Fisher and James Van Hoften, in case you were wondering who the astronauts were in that.
Okay, that's awesome photograph of bird there.
Oh.
From the OMS. Orbital Movement System. We said it before, we'll say it again. Just remind people. The OMEs that were retired with the space shuttle, they were taken out and given to Orion. They had a service module engines until they put new ones in. So the OMS engines, which were used on the final shuttle missions, were all donated to Orion. So it's not just the SSMEs which went to Artemis, but it's also that as well. I did see a question about that. I'm sure I saw a question about Artemis. I'm gonna take it now. Right. Adrian asks, it's in the panel. Here we go. There, that's why it's waiting to be clicked. Aside from the extra segment, are there any other differences, improvements to the SRBs between early shuttle flights and later ones on Artemis? Yeah, well, they did change the SRBs ahead of going to 5-segment because there was a lot of material, a lot of liner material inside that was environmentally bad, apparently, asbestos level bad. So they took that out and replaced it. And that's why the initial SRBs that they made for SLS were actually having void issues inside. And it took them a good 2 years to solve that problem. But it's because of the change of liners. So
yeah,
they The SRBs are greener now. Can I say that? It's terrible things about SRBs because they're not
No,
green at all.
that
But they
makes
are
sense.
greener. Yeah.
Hey, Chris, they're doing as best as they can.
Oh,
Thank you. That's
that
awesome.
was good.
Thank you, Sawyer. Oh, it was Jack.
Yeah. Also, for there being so much more green now by dumping them in the ocean and not reusing them. So yeah, they got rid of the parachute segment as well in the nose cone.
There we go. I went really segue there because I was talking about the orbital moving engines, which are completely different to the SRBs. But it's about donating. It's the shuttle derived technology that is now being implemented with Artemis. It's not just the SSMEs. It's not just the SRBs. It's also the OMEs as well. Look
Yeah, and
at
there are going to be further upgrades to the Artemis SRBs. There's the Bowley booster, which I believe
Yes.
Northrop is going to test early next year, if I'm not mistaken, which involves like a carbon composite case and a bunch of other upgrades. But that's neither here nor there. Let's keep talking. I mean, oh my gosh, what a photo!
Sawyer
Talk
flex.
about a flex, literally.
Yeah. That is amazing. That's on the end of the remote manipulator system, which is a shuttle arm. And he's right on the end. He's on his little I forgot what to call it now. My brain has gone because it's gone past an hour. I can't last more than an hour in my brain these days. Foot restraint. There we go. Foot restraint is what he's stood on. And that foot restraint is exactly the same technology and it looks exactly the same as what they use on EVAs on the ISS today. So it literally is proven hardware that works. It's amazing, the foot restraints. Articulated foot restraint is the actual full title of it. It's coming back to my brain now. There we go. Talk about touching engine nozzles. Look at this.
That was part of the way to capture it, was literally just grab it and pull it down back then. I mean, obviously, if it was meant to be repaired, they attached the attachment points for the robotic arm. But until then, it was literally just the arm would help guide it, and the astronauts would grab onto it and pull it down to fix it.
Yeah, because look, the RMS is there, grappled onto it on its grapple fixture, as it would be. So that's all secure there. And then it literally is like human-assisted help there with an astronaut and an EVA outside the payload bay of the space shuttle. Unbelievable. Look at this. The size of the satellite for scale, by the way. I'm sure that is a photo opportunity more than anything else. Although, again, he would have his arms in that position. I don't think that is a pose. I think that is actually what they would be in that position because he's on the foot restraints. So he's completely secure. That's why he can be hands-free. But he will be preparing to capture it. So that will be normal, but it just looks funny.
Yep.
And that is a photograph from the arm looking down into the payload bay.
Oh.
I mean, I told you this mission's got amazing photographs, and I'm not lying. Look at this. Oh, a little word about the cargo bay doors, the payload bay doors. Why are they shiny on that side? It's because they're radiators. They are literally radiators, and they've had a few MMD strikes where they've hit the freon loops inside the radiators, and that has been almost a case of emergency return, where we're talking about transatlantic abort sites. There's about 80 landing strips around the world that if there was an emergency and they had to deorbit that minute, they were like, right, look, we're in serious issue, get down ASAP. They can pick one of those 80 sites. And there were some amazing landing strips. I will go through that on a Shuttle Sunday in future because I've got the maps and everything from a document in L2. And it shows some of them are on like crazy islands in the middle of nowhere with strips that are just long enough to, for an orbiter to land on, just long enough. So the long runways in the first place, but it's literally all the island is a runway and they're in the middle of nowhere. And it's absolutely crazy that they could have landed on those, but that's what they had to do. If they had to come down, emergency deorbit burn, they'd have to pick one of these 90-odd landing sites and just take the pick. And obviously, transporting the orbiter back would have been a big issue, but about getting the crew back in one piece, that's the main thing.
Yeah, you can also see, it looks like one of the antennas sticking out there, and the astronaut is currently located at the Leasecraft Equipment Storage Assembly on this mission. There was also a bar storage assembly, both located in that exact spot.
And there's the hatch.
Yep, that's the airlock hatch.
Yep. That's how they got out there. Very cool. More satellite grabbing. Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore.
Oh, that's funny.
More satellite grabbing. There's a colour photograph of the Flex. Now, that was a pose. I know I was talking about earlier about how he had his arms up, but that was probably to capture the satellite. This was absolutely for a photo opportunity, no doubt about it. In fact, we should have that for your site. We should have a command in chat for Nightbot where Sawyer Flex is not just Sawyer Flex and then some words, but also this image. Would that work for you,
Ooh,
Sawyer?
I like it.
That'd be
Good.
great.
There we go.
I'm not
We'll do
Sawyer,
that.
but that'd be great.
You're not, Jack?
Look at this.
Speaking of not pose either. Oh, you gotta love it.
Satellite deploy. The deploy. I've got lots. There we go. Gone through all this. I am not going to go to the video. We are over time, but I don't care. Shuttle. It's fun. 1 second. Bear with me while I find the video in question.
Chris, these
Yes?
videos, if you don't
Mhm.
want to see them on Shuttle, like if you're watching them on Shuttle Sunday and you want to see the full one without us skipping around, they're all on L2, right?
No. A lot of these I've taken from a various amount of sources. Not just like you could watch the whole thing on L2 because the press conference post-mission ones, but the crew talking are on YouTube, but they're from NASA. But luckily, a few people have saved them, so that's why I can bring them on. The videos themselves are, when we get to later missions, yes, they are L2. A lot of these older missions, I'm going back in time, and it was like very hard to get hold of. So I have gone back to public resources for the post-landing press conferences. That's literally what the crew are doing. They've all sat down, they've got back home, and the media are there, and it's fun, and it's kind of like, we're just going to review what we did. We've got some nice video to show you. Well, I appreciate you trying to pimp L2. Let me get this video up. Here we
We did have an early morning liftoff. We were in the dark up right until just about liftoff time, and the photography that you see here shows it looks more like a night launch than a day launch. Actually, we were able to see some of the early indications of dawn just about the time of ignition. We did take off through some clouds, and as we passed through those clouds, it really was spectacular, more so than I had imagined it would be. The clouds reflected the exhaust plumes and exhaust colors from the solid and the liquid engines, and turned the whole area a very bright orange-pink color, just very similar to the hue that forms around the airplane or around the vehicle during the ionization period of re-entry. This series of pictures was put together sequentially by Don Picard here, and I think it really is a beautiful set of pictures. I think he did a great job of putting this series together. This particular one you're looking at now is taken from a helicopter. You can see the helicopter blades rotating there at the top of the picture. The first thing when you get on orbit, there's an awful lot of work to do, and it's a terrible temptation to keep from running over to the window and spending your time looking out at the world. That was Africa that we looked at. Very quick crew introduction as we go around. This is Dick Covey. Dick's colonel in the Air Force, graduate of the Air Force Academy from Florida. Mike
OSAT spacecraft there with the cylindrical shape and the gray spherical shape on the bottom, the PAM, payload apogee motor that boosts the satellite on up to geosynchronous orbit.
We hadn't planned on deploying 2 satellites on the first day, but this wasn't a normal first day, and we got the word from the ground that we were also going to deploy the ASC satellite, which you see here. Ox remarked it looked like a bad amusement park ride, and it really did going out. It was amazing to us that it spun as perfectly as it did, but every aspect of that deploy was nominal, and I think our words to date are that both satellites are functioning perfectly in geosynchronous orbit.
Since we did a large part of our first 2 days planned work on the first day, the second day was left to getting ready for the rest of the mission, and also gave us some time to start doing our Earth observations. One of our favorite modes is what we call the glass bottom boat mode, where we could, a couple of guys could sit up looking out the overhead and back windows and take pictures. This shows the eastern coast of Australia. We saw lots of Australia and lots of southern Africa and lots of South America as the land masses on our flight. Starting from the first day on, there was always somebody in the window with a camera. There was a great deal of both our entertainment and our work. This is another shot of Typhoon Pat and some of Bora Bora and the Society Islands in Polynesia.
RPM as we backed away from it. It's a pretty satellite in that it's deployed against the Earth or with our payload bay down, so all of our pictures end up down against the oceans.
All the electrical hardware that we were to use in repairing the satellite was checked out on day 2. I'm here checking out the spun bypass unit that you see flashing on the wall there. That was the one that was actually attached to the satellite and enabled us to give the ground control of it. And prior to any planned EVA, we always check out the suits and make sure they're functioning as they should. And here you see Mike and Ox and I checking out the suit. That's the display we see in the caution and warning system flashing in front there. And the suit's checked out just fine.
The rendezvous for joining up with the CENTCOM satellite went extremely nominally. We see Joe flying the spacecraft in here through the 1,000-foot point at a closure rate of 1.5 foot per second, which was our braking gate at that point. We were very fortunate to have good ground support on the rendezvous. Our first sensor pass with from the orbiter showed that the error was only 182 feet off in the locations between where we thought we were and where we thought the satellite was. We were very pleased with that, and Joe was able to bring the CENTCOM satellite right on into the payload bay.
Once we went outside, of course, this just demonstrates that we're half time in the dark and half time in the day. We went outside at night to set up the platforms that fish could work on. We had these little lights on our helmet that gave us some additional light and had 2 or 3 lights out in the payload bay. After this, I went off and got onto the end of the arm on the manipulator foot restraint, preparing to approach the satellite and see how we could get hold of it. We were somewhat limited in the fact that we had this single joint operations on the arm, and the satellite was not quite exactly where we wanted it to be. But we found out that that using some of the devices that we had worked on the ground, you could get a good idea about how it would handle, and it handled about like we thought. You see here when I had spun it around, and this was getting hold of the side that we wanted to attach the capture bar to. You can see a little bit of how it is to handle that thing. It's big and bulky and massive, of course, and probably the hard part about maneuvering is you can't see very well. It's kind of like staring into your house here, moving it around. It's very big, but it was manageable.
Once Ox got a hold of it, we very carefully maneuvered it forward and down to Bill, and Bill attached this handling bar so he could manage it while Ox, on the other end, took off the capture bar and attached the bar that had a grapple fixture that was compatible with the remote manipulator system. As soon as he gets this tight, I will take him down. Ox will get out of the MFR and take the MFR off of the arm, and then I went back up overhead. This wasn't how I planned to do the grapple, single joint, but we felt that once Fish had a hold of it there in his foot restraints, we wanted him to keep a hold of it. And I could see the tip of the grapple fixture there in the center of that window, and I just brought the end effector down over it and kind of stabbed it. And I knew that once I got the can over that pin, once I commanded a capture, that it would be securely in there. Once we got it on the end of the arm, then it was just a matter of taking it nice and slow and presenting the various work sites to Bill for the repair work that he had to do.
And that went pretty well. Mike was able to get the positions that I needed just as I had trained for them to be in. We attached the electrical connections that were needed and expected. We were able to then attach the spun bypass unit that you saw me checking out. That was the first time we had any indication that the satellite was really alive, and first good indication we had that our repair was going to work. We had evidence of good battery function in the satellite. Here you can see the reflection of the orbiter as Ox is helping me configure a tool board onto my tool stand. And again, much of the work we did with the SBU, or spun bypass unit, was in the dark. That was a little bit different than I'd expected, but it didn't prove much of a problem. The spun bypass unit attached just like it had when we went out to Hughes and tried attaching it on the F5 SYNCOM that they had out there. Really went quite well. The D-spun position working on the top of the satellite, and it was there that we made the required electrical connections with our relay power unit, which enabled us to fire the squibs necessary to deploy the Omni antenna. And I don't think I really expected this to work, but it did. And that fella came up, and I was real excited about it. It worked a little slower than they than the other one did, but that's temperature dependent. And after the Omni had deployed, everything looked real good to us on board. That the repair was, at least our part of the repair, was going to work and work well.
After we knew, but we decided that things were looking so good, let's not try to make it better. This was the second one. The first and the last one are about the best, but you can see we were real pleased that the attitude of it looked real good. It was not coning, which is the one thing that we'd concerned ourselves the most with. It was spinning very regularly. Again, Joe was doing a great job of keeping me right in there to get it when I came by again. You just reach out and give it another push. You can see the orbiter. Every time you push on it, it would move away from you at a small, about 0.2 of a foot per second. The orbiter had to make that up, and we got it every single time it went by. So it was we were real pleased with that. This is the last one. It's going now a little bit over 2 RPM. I got a real good push on this one. You can see the arm bounce on these things when every time you'd get hold of it. Give one little push goodbye, and we quit chasing it, and then you can see it now separating away from the orbiter. It looked in excellent condition. The only thing we left with it were those electronic boxes, and we left this 5-pound spin-up bar on it. About this time, took one look back at it and couldn't reach around to pat myself on the back, so we were all pretty pleased with it here, though. That was a lot of fun.
Any mission this complex and with this kind of job, you notice Ox didn't have any coning on the SYNCOM. He had a lot of practice as we were getting ready for it. While we were on orbit, while we were in zero gravity, Fish is getting the SYNCOM simulator treatment. The last push-off, you'll notice, we didn't get any coning on SYNCOM, but he got a little coning on Fish on this last one near the wall there. Mission this complex requires strict discipline, and fortunately we had a well-disciplined crew. Of course, you take 4 guys off the farm. Some of them are able to respond a little quicker and learn a little faster than others to military movements. And some guys just never learn.
That's crazy.
I'm not doing any more parades. We did have a drill team, a crack drill team here that we practiced every morning. Zero gravity's got to be fun. If you hadn't noticed or picked up on it by now, it just is a great deal of fun. And while we were airborne, we took off with 5 guys, and we picked up a 6th crew member on board and decided that the only fair thing to do was to include him in a crew portrait. So we piled around this guy. The morning of landing actually was a typical Edwards day. It was a good, clear day. We could see very well. The wind was blowing about 20 knots, and it was a little dark when we came in. It was dark during the entire entry until we got just about to the Edwards area and the sun came up over the horizon. We could see the ground from the cone, from the high-altitude approach cone, but it wasn't until we were on final approach that we could really pick out the details of the lake bed and pick up the aim point and then go ahead and settle in for landing. This is kind of a neat series of pictures coming through the skyline. You notice it started out blue and it's turning kind of the pink glow of the early morning dawn. There was no turbulence. It was really a beautiful morning to land an airplane out at Edwards. Dick made superb calls, altitude airspeed calls, which which allowed me just to concentrate on flying the airplane and not worry about how the energy was coming out. And we landed on lakebed runway 23, which we'd landed on previously with the program. We had, with that wind, we had a fairly short rollout, about 6,100 foot, I believe it was, rollout distance. We used moderate braking, and to date, at least, we have not learned of any damage that was done to the brake system. I think we also felt, as a crew, we felt about as good as any crew, I think, has after landing. We recovered, readapted to 1G very rapidly, felt good, ran around, looked at the airplane, found very little damage on the airplane. I think to summarize the mission, I think it's fair to say that I feel anyway that it was just a tremendous team effort.
So that was cool. I let that one run a little bit longer. I've not been skipping through the crew stuff because of just having fun, but that was particularly good fun with the drill maneuvers they were doing on board there. They really, I mean, you get a lot of that on a shuttle cruise, and I'm sure there's a lot of that on the other crews, on other vehicles, but on the space shuttle you could do that. I'm sure they do it on the ISS as well. Do you remember the ISS one where I forget who it was? Who was inside a container in a gorilla suit? Do you remember that one, Sawyer?
That was Scott Kelly,
Jack.
right?
Yes. There we go. And chased Tim Peake around the ISS with it on. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I
Oh,
forget which episode it was of Two Funny Astronauts, but we did have a discussion about that on one of the recent episodes of Two Funny Astronauts. So if you haven't checked out that video on our channel, or that series, I should say, check it out because it's really a hilarious story.
I know it's a dawn launch, but it was technically a night launch, and the night launch ones will be showing you. There's a mission about 1998. I forget which one it was, but I'll find it. We'll come to it on a short Sunday, where it was this kind of shot, but it was even more impressive. And I'm going to try and get permission to do some personal camcorder videos that I've got hold of from the viewing site on the Causeway, I think it was. And they are spectacular because they are long range, just going through the clouds at night, just lighting up the entire area. And the crowd reaction is like they weren't expecting it to be that amazing. And you just hear people screaming like crazy. And, you know, I might have to edit that one because I remember there's some swear words in it.
Uh-oh.
So, I do actually, it's just come to my brain just now. I remember one of the videos, there's one guy and he's just like F-bombing all the way through it. It's like, oh, I need to find a way of, I'll be asking some of our editors to try and work that one out for us. But I've got to show that. It's weeks and weeks and weeks away. But yeah.
I have posted behind the scenes video of launches to members, and I've had to edit some of the words out of it from nearby people. The excitement is always very hyped.
Yeah. Awesome. Right, hang on. Why is it displaying that? I'm displaying landing photographs, please. Here we go. Let's try and shut that one down. There we go. Yes, okay. I think my laptop has finally died, but that's fine. Oh, there we go. No, it's working again. There we go. Right, that is the lovely post-landing photograph I wanted to share, because that is just beautiful. The way it's silhouetted.
That early morning desert light, something about Edwards and Mojave. It's just so beautiful out there in the morning, and you can just get such amazing photographs of aircraft if you're there at the exact right time and place.
Absolutely. There's the fan truck. That's what they have out there. Every single landing to blow away the hypergolics and what's left remaining, the fumes that they don't want the landing crew to be subjected to for obvious reasons. But yeah, it's less of a thing there. I did see on the topic of landing a question asking about one of the UK landing sites. If you can find it, Jack, because I've got too many windows open. Everything is starting to die.
Yeah, I've got it right here. Daniel's asking, was RAF Manston an abort site, one of the longest, widest runways in the UK?
No, I checked it. There was only one UK option. I think because of the size of the UK, if you think about it, the space orbiter coming back from from orbit is only going to need the one option in the UK if it needed the UK option, and that was RAF Fairford. That was the only one. It was also transatlantic abort, but it was also the emergency one as well. That was 3 kilometers long for a runway. I did actually do Wayne Hale is in L2, which is amazing, right? And I asked him, because I'm an idiot, I said, I've got this massively long World War II runway about 5 miles from my house called Elvington. People from the UK and here will know that's where Top Gear do a lot of their long distance drag racing to test, because it's such a long runway. It is really, really, really long. It's for the old Lancaster bombers So that's why it was from World War II. And I said, if an orbiter came back, he said, yeah, it could. But, the best options they've got is actual active runways, because if they've got all the emergency equipment and support people there, because they're bringing a crew back. It literally is. You don't just go for the longest runway that's in the middle of nowhere. You're going to try and bring it back to a runway that's got the emergency equipment and what have you to cater for an orbiter that's landed in an emergency scenario. So that's where it came from. Oh, we got Ryan in the back room now, just going through all the RAF bases.
Mr. Map.
Mr. Oh, hey, you said it, not me. You're the one who's got to deal with him now. Right. So I think that concludes this Shuttle Sunday. Another one that went on for 90 minutes, not an hour, but that's fine. That's more than fine, because we've got 3 missions. The fun thing is, the next Shuttle Sunday will be dedicated to one mission, and the one mission is because it's Atlantis' maiden flight. So for that one, we're going to go through baby photographs at Palmdale. We need to go through a transport to KSC. We need to go to flight readiness firing at 39A. We need to go through the mission and the landing and the crew talking and what have you. So I think that is definitely an hour. And I think just doing a dedicated mission for each orbiter's debut, like we will for Endeavour as well, a maiden, obvious one single Shuttle Sunday. So that's the next Shuttle Sunday, which will be dedicated to all Atlantis' maiden mission, starting with her construction in Palmdale. So it'll be a real Atlantis special, which I'm sure all the Atlantis fans will be very happy with, because I'm looking forward to that one myself. So I think that's a nice photograph to leave it on, actually. I was going to put the thumbnail up, but I'm going to leave it on that, because it looks pretty. So let me first of all thank the people who've been on with us. First of all, Jay in the background, listening to me moaning about video sound. I think the recorded version will have a fixed version, because I'm going to pass it on to him. So if you're listening to this on the recorded version, you're thinking, well, Chris, the video's played fine for me. It's because we fixed it in post. That's what they do in the Hollywood studios. They fix it in post. But let me thank also Sawyer, who's been on with us. Thank you, Sawyer.
Thank you. I mean, I love this part. STS-51-F, always a very interesting mission. And yeah, I'm excited to see another baby orbiter.
Also, thank you to Jack. Thanks for being on, Jack.
No worries. Always here for Shuttle Sunday. Excited for the next one as we get to talk about the best shuttle, Atlantis, and we get some of those cool Palmdale photos you mentioned. But as for this one, thanks for watching.
Keep hearing Sawyer go, say Atlantis special. Oh, never mind. We'll get to the other shuttles. Don't worry, but there'll be no problem at all. I know Endeavour will be coming up soon, so there we go.
Okay,
right. So until next time, let me find a proper end-up point, because I know we're live, and when I do Raptor sides, I can just babble on for ages, but this is a recorded video, so I'm going to make sure there's a good end point here by saying thank you for all for joining us, and until the next Shuttle Sunday, thank you and goodbye.